Welcome back to Business 101, Introduction to Business. And in this series of lectures, we're going to start to look at content from Chapter 9 of the text, really taking a good deep dive into what is our thinking on leadership. And in this particular lecture, we're looking to answer the question, what is leadership? To take a close look at exactly what are our definitions and descriptions of leadership as we begin to look at some of the topics in Chapter 9. And with that, I think that would be appropriate for us to consider some great leaders that we have had and we still have. And you can see here from this particular slide, obviously, most of you will recognize the images of Abraham Lincoln and Martin Luther King Jr., two very, very effective leaders who rose to the challenge of difficulties in their environment and circumstances, very, very difficult decisions they needed to make, and a lasting legacy and track record of leading and motivating people towards the right direction to leave inexorable, permanent, positive change in the world around them. But in the midst of those two photographs, you see photos of three gentlemen who you may not recognize. In the upper left-hand corner, Ken Frazier, the longtime CEO of Merck Pharmaceutical. In the upper right-hand corner, Daniel Amos, the CEO of Aflac. And in the middle, someone who may be more familiar to us here in California, Mark Benioff, the CEO of Salesforce. Those three gentlemen are also responsible for some great leadership, a legacy of positive change in their organizations. We'll take a closer look at them, perhaps, as we consider some research and writing projects we may assign to you in the near future for work in this chapter on leadership. Suffice to say that each of the five faces of on that particular slide represent a long history, a legacy of great leadership, a true inherent, intrinsic understanding of what it means to lead people in right and ethical decisions. Each of those five. And then, quite frankly, we have to admit, none of these five men are perfect by any stretch of the imagination. While they have a history of accomplishing great things, the best of men are men at best. That being said, then, let us consider what this image may represent for us in the near future. That for many of us, many of you as young women and young men, you aspire to and eventually will be given the opportunity to lead others. How will you lead? What does leadership really mean? Does it mean more than standing in front of a crowd of people with a tablet in one hand, reciting a speech? Does it mean being able to think well on your feet and answer questions intelligently? What does it mean to set a vision and to motivate and compel and unite people? Because that's really the essence of what we mean when we talk about leadership. So take this photograph then, perhaps this stock photo, as aspirational or inspirational for you as you consider what the future may hold for you in your life and career. Let's begin then considering what is leadership. Well, the first bullet point there is the definition from the textbook. Leadership, as the textbook would describe it, the processes and behaviors used by someone, such as a manager, to motivate, inspire, and influence the behaviors of others. And so really what it's about is motivating, inspiring, and influencing the behaviors of others. At least that is what the textbook would provide as sort of a boilerplate definition. However, I've given you four other quotes on leadership. The first, the art of motivating a group of people to act toward achieving a common goal. That's a good boilerplate definition, of course, or at least a description that fits many, many different circumstances and domains, from leading a for-profit corporation to leading a sports team. The second, leadership is about mapping out where you need to go to win as a team or an organization. That's part of leadership. Certainly there's more to it than just that, but certainly leaders are leading towards a direction. Unless you've mapped out where that direction is, How will you lead your team or organization in any direction? The third, to motivate your team to achieve the highest levels of performance. That too is a good description of part of what it means to be a leader. Certainly, there's more to it than that, but certainly you are motivating your team, which includes a whole sorts of other activities, right? Inspiring, uniting, compelling, all those kinds of things, right? To achieve the highest levels of performance, at least the highest levels of performance possible for your team. And the final one there on this slide, at least, leadership is the ability to see a problem and be the solution. That speaks and suggests to all sorts of other things, right? That leadership is, in essence, setting an example for others to follow, right? That leadership also includes the vision to be able to see a problem and see the opportunities how to solve it and make wise decisions. So these are all, I think, useful. I don't know if I would necessarily describe any of these bullet points as the comprehensive de facto definition, but at least as we begin to wrap our heads around what does it mean to lead, what does leadership mean, I think each of these 5 bullet points are at least helpful as we start to refine our thinking on the matter. This next slide then will help us to, again, continue to refine these thoughts as we think about in what ways are management and leadership similar, and in which ways are they distinct and different. And that's sort of the whole point of this Venn diagram, showing that there is some overlap there, right? Certainly between management and leadership, but they are distinct different roles. They are distinct different sets of roles and activities. A person can be a manager. A person can be a leader. A person can be both. A person can be neither. But as we really think of what is good management, well, we've talked about that, right? We've talked about that from a previous chapter. The 4 primary functions of management: planning, organizing, leading, and controlling. So that should not be new to you. But then we consider leadership and we consider in what ways perhaps is it not the same as management. There are several ways you could look at it, at least 4 in this diagram, right? Leadership involves setting an agenda, having a vision to do that, aligning people and their varying motivations and their varying different types of objectives and goals and functions, aligning them towards a singular purpose. It means inspiring people. Again, we have said in a previous lecture, leadership has to do with the management of human resources. And so human beings need to be inspired in order to give their very, very best. And then leadership is also not simply inspiring and then walking away. Leadership includes the act of monitoring and course correction and re-inspiring and correcting and getting the very, very best out of human beings who perhaps are a little slower to respond or recalcitrant or stubborn or any of those kinds of things. And so these are all functions of leadership which really are sort of distinct from the issues of and the functions and goals of management. So again, this introductory lecture to Chapter 9 is intended to get our minds moving, to get us thinking about what is leadership, how does this impact my life, what kind of leader will I be, and as we consider the next series of videos that we're going to dive into here, what are really the functions of leadership as we've already considered what motivates our people. Well, how do we get the very best from them? What are different approaches to leading? And of course, how have people who have gone before us already thought and researched and written about leadership that might benefit our thinking? This then, our introduction to Chapter 9. Hope you got something out of it, and we will see you in the next lecture.